Hey everyone, in this video let's talk about der, die, das, which are the three German grammatical genders. And so if you come across any given word, like for example here I have Tasse, how do you know what gender that is? And I think all the students that I taught German so far have this problem sometimes that they know the word, but they don't know the gender. And how to figure out the gender and not always remember it one by one for every single word, that's what we are talking about in this video. And by the way, if we haven't met, nice to meet you. I'm Gregor. I'm based in Switzerland between Basel and Zurich, and I'm an entrepreneur and also a German teacher. And I'm also teaching my wife, who is currently at A1 level, but if others are finding this content useful, all the better. And so let's jump into the topic, which is der, die, das. We have the masculine, that's der, and the feminine, that's die, and the neuter, that's das. And so the big question is, if you have any word, how do you figure out what's the gender? And I tell you the best way to do it is to look at 3 steps. First step, does it have a biological gender? Because if you're talking about a brother, an uncle, an aunt, a sister, there is a biological gender present, and the grammatical gender almost always aligns with the biological gender. There is one big exception, but I'm going to tell you about that afterwards. Then the biggest, most important thing to do is to look at the suffix, the word ending. So for example, earlier I mentioned die Tasse. And die Tasse, the suffix here is e. And this letter e also gives you a hint that this is probably a feminine word. And so this is what you will use most often to conveniently determine the gender of a word. And lastly, we can also do meaning groups. That's kind of a learning hack where you group similar words together that all have the same gender. So for example, all the weekdays are masculine. So then you don't need to remember each individually, but you just know if you see a weekday, oh, that's masculine. All right. And before we jump into the detail, let me also mention that I prepared a cheat sheet. You can get that by clicking on the link in the video description. And that has all the information that we'll cover in this video. It's great to follow along during the video, but also if you want to look something up after the video, I think it's a very useful resource. All right, and with that, let's jump in. And we start with the biological sex words with der. So for example, we have der Mann, that's the man, that's der Mann. Then we have der Bruder, that's the brother, der Bruder. And then we have some words that describe jobs or roles. And so here, for example, we have der Student, that's the student, der Student. And this is the most generic word, which is a masculine word, but in plural it can also have a gender neutral meaning. So if we say die Studenten, that's generally encompassing feminine and masculine both together. So male and female can both be addressed by plural Studenten. And then we have der Bäcker, the baker, that's der Bäcker. And then let's look at the feminine ones. We have die Frau, the woman, die Frau. Then die Schwester, the sister, die Schwester. And die Studentin, that's the specific female student word now. So if you compare der Student and die Studentin, is the same but with en female suffix. So here we know it's specifically a female person. And we have die Bäckerin, that's the female baker specifically. And so in English, you actually have that for some career words. So for example, there is actor and actress. So you now just need to imagine that in German, we have the same situation for all career verbs, not just these very specific ones. And that's how it works. And then we have a few kind of gender neutral biological sex words, which is kind of a contradiction in itself, but there are these 3. And so there is, for example, das Kind, which is the child. Das Kind can be both man or woman, so that's how it works. And then the big exception, das Mädchen, that's the girl, das Mädchen. And you will learn why this is a gender neutral word, even though it's a biological female, when we look at the suffix chen. That's the reason. And then lastly, we have das Mitglied, which is the only relevant career word, which is das. All others are der or die. And it's not just das Mitglied, though, because in German, we love to combine words. And so we have, for example, a member of the board. We'll combine that into one word in German. So, and that's das Vorstandsmitglied. And then that's also a gender neutral word in that case. All right, so these are the biological sex words. Then let's look at suffixes. And so here we have quite a few, so I'll go through them a bit quicker, but this is what you should remember. And the point of this video is not that you try to memorize all these suffixes right now, but the good thing is that when you learn a new word, which has er in the end, then you can just remember that this is, for example, a male suffix. And when you come across other words which have a similar suffix, you can make a guess that this is also a masculine word. And I should mention that these are guidelines, not solid rules. So for example, with er, we also have the word Butter, which is butter in English, Butter. And so Butter, for example, it is a feminine word. We say die Butter. But in 95% or more cases, this is quite solid. So I just gave you one very particular exception. Okay, so let's get started. For er, the example is der Bäcker, the baker, der Bäcker. And then for en, that's another ending, we have the example der Ofen, that's the oven in English, der Ofen. And ig, here our example is der Honig, that's the honey, der Honig. And ling is another male ending, that is, for example, der Frühling, the spring, der Frühling. And or, der Motor, that means the engine, der Motor. Another ending is ismus, like der Kapitalismus, that's the capitalism, der Kapitalismus. And est, like der Optimist, die Optimist, der Optimist. And with these endings, like for example, ismus or ist, it's very convenient to notice the connection between the German word and the English word. So every English word that ends with ism or lism will end with ismus or lismus in German. So for example, in English, here the example is capitalism, but another ism is like communism. And so then in German, you can guess that this is der Kommunismus, which has the same ending and is masculine. So every English word that has ism as an ending is in German automatically masculine. And the same with ist, for example, pessimist, optimist. They are all masculine words in German as well. So sometimes you don't even need to make a translation necessarily to know the gender. All right, next let's look at feminine suffixes, and this is the biggest group, so let's rock through them. We have first of all e, which is here the example die Katze, the cat, die Katze, or as I mentioned earlier, we have here die Tasse, which is also an e suffix verb, feminine, the cup, die Tasse. And en, that's the word we saw earlier with the professions. And here the example is die Freundin, that's the female friend, die Freundin. And Frau, for example, die Hausfrau, the housewife, die Hausfrau. And then I, that's by the way the Chinese word for love, but we are not in a Chinese lesson here, so let's go on with German ei, which is, for example, die Bäckerei, the bakery, die Bäckerei. And then we have Keit, die Süßigkeit, which means candy, die Süßigkeit. And also Heit, here the example is die Gesundheit, that's health, die Gesundheit. And Schaft is another feminine ending, die Freundschaft, that's the friendship, die Freundschaft. And UNG, die Wohnung, the apartment, die Wohnung. Also at, for example, Universität, the university, die Universität. Also IK, die Kritik, the criticism, die Kritik. And ION, die Position, the position, die Position. And IE, which we pronounce as I in German. So die Demokratie, the democracy, die Demokratie. And last two, UR, like die Kultur, the culture, die Kultur. And then ENZ, which we have the example, Existenz, die Existence, die Existenz. All right, and lastly, let's look at das with the suffix. And here we have chen, for example, das Häuschen, the little house, das Häuschen. And we also have Lein, which is the same. For example, here, das Häuslein, it also means the little house. Das Häuslein. And so, chen and Lein are both suffixes that make words cute and small. And so, for example, in Switzerland, we will always use the Lein, but in other areas of Germany, they will prefer chen, but the meaning is sort of identical. And here we also have the reason why the German word for the girl, which is das Mädchen, is neuter, even though it's a biological female. And the reason is that it has this cutifying suffix. So hundreds of years ago, we used the original word for girl, which is die Magd, which is a feminine word. But over time, people only use the cutifying version with chen. And chen is, in this case, overpowering the biological gender because the last syllable always rules when it comes to gender. And so it's das Mädchen today. So that's a big exception to remember. And now you also know why it is this exception, is because of this chen syllable. And then we have some more with a neuter, which is, for example, ment, like das Dokument, the document, das Dokument. And then nis, das Geheimnis, the secret, das Geheimnis. And just two more, tum, like das Eigentum, which means the property, das Eigentum. And like das Museum, the museum, das Museum. All right, and these were a lot of suffixes. So let me give you a bonus tip. It's kind of similar to what I mentioned in the tip with chen. And that tip is that always the last part of a word counts. And that's the syllable, but that's also a combined word. So if we have das Haus, the house, das Haus, and die Frau, the woman, die Frau, and we combine them to die Hausfrau, which is the housewoman or housewife, die Hausfrau, then we have the feminine gender because it's die Frau, and das Haus, the das disappears. It's not relevant anymore. It takes the feminine gender for the combined word. And here we have just two words, but in German we often combine 3, 4, 5, 6 words. We love to make our long words in German. And in that case as well, ignore everything before the last word, only look at the last word and the last syllable. And that's actually a rule without exception. There is never a word that doesn't have the last syllable and the last word deciding the gender. All right, that's the bonus tip. And then let's look at the learning hack of the meaning groups. And I'm just giving you here some examples. And there is no really hard-cut definition what is a meaning group and what is not. You can also make these up yourself, or you can look them up. There are tables of these in the internet, but I'm going to give you some of the ones that you will need kind of early on in your German journey with A1 level vocabulary, and also the most useful ones. So for example, time of the day is a common one. We have der Morgen, the morning, der Morgen, and der Mittag, the noon, der Mittag, and der Nachmittag, the afternoon, der Nachmittag, and der Abend, the evening, der Abend. So you see all of these time of day words are masculine, with one big exception, that is die Nacht, that means the night, die Nacht. And it's also written down on the cheat sheet, by the way, so you won't forget it. And then the days of the week, that is der Montag, the Monday, and let me go through all of them. Der Dienstag, the Tuesday, der Dienstag, der Mittwoch, the Wednesday, der Mittwoch, der Donnerstag, the Thursday, der Donnerstag, der Freitag, the Friday, der Freitag, der Samstag, the Saturday, der Samstag, and also der Sonntag, the Sunday, der Sonntag. So here we have no exception at all. And also you can actually tell all of them except Wednesday, they end with the word day. And that's also telling you that the word day, der Tag in German, is also masculine. So that's the reason why that is. But anyways, it's still a convenient group to remember. And then let's look at die. So here the first group is numbers. So like die Eins, the one, die Eins. And die Drei, the number 3, die Drei. Die 10, the number 10, die 10. And die 100, that's the number 100, 100, die 100. And then there are not too many important ones with these, so I put in another one that's perhaps not the most important one to know, but still that's flowers and trees. They're mostly feminine, like die Blume, the flower, die Blume. And also die Rose, that's the rose, die Rose. And die Tulpe, the tulip, die Tulpe. And die Tanne, the fir tree, like right now the Christmas trees, die Tanne. And then let's go with the last one, that is das. So here we have verbal nouns. Verbal nouns, that's when you have a verb and you turn it into a noun, like reading in English. So for example, I can say, the reading was interesting. And in German I say, das Lesen war interessant. So verbal nouns are neuter. And you can also do that with das Sprechen, the speaking, das Sprechen, das Tanzen, the dancing, das Tanzen, das Gehen, the walking, das Gehen. And basically you can do that with any verb in German. I don't think there's any exception to that. So you can make a noun out of all the verbs and they are all gender neuter. And then also materials are a neuter group. For example, das Holz, the wood, das Holz. And das Metall, the metal, das Metall. And das Wasser, the water, das Wasser. And das Gold, which is the gold, das Gold. All right, so these were a lot of information, but definitely you will come across situations where you just have no idea what the gender is. And I have a tip for you. Look at this graphic here, which shows the word frequency according to the Duden, which is the authoritative German dictionary. And you see that 45% of all words are feminine. So if you just have no clue at all, I suggest you just try feminine. And in almost half the time, you will probably be right. Now, we don't know if these are the most frequent words. So depending on the level and the set of vocabulary you are learning, of course, these percentages might be different. But overall, if you just need to make one guess, I think you should go with die. All right. And so once again, if you want to learn this or keep the reference material handy, there is a cheat sheet and you can just use the link in the video description below to get that. And so that was it. I hope that was useful. If you have other topics that you'd like me to talk about, to make a video about, let me know in the comments. And otherwise, I wish you all a great day and best luck with your German studies. Bye.